Hola, soy Alejandro Sauquillo y estoy aquí hoy con el gran Richard Turrin. Richard, thank you for accepting this interview, and I have to tell you that I'm a heavy reader. I read around almost, not yet, but almost three books a week, and yours has been a blast. I have enjoyed it so much, and I really recommend it to anyone who wants to understand what is going in China with the digital money and what are CBDCs. So thank you very much for writing such a nice book and for accepting this interview.
I'm so honored. Thank you, Alejandro. Thank you for calling me El Grande, because I'm Italian, and that's a wonderful thing to call somebody. So look, I'm so honored that you enjoyed reading Cashless, because it's the kind of book that most people think, well, this is going to be boring. It's not written for me. And actually, I did everything to make Cashless an interesting reading book, because I took real examples out of my life in China. And I tried to make it so that everybody would be accessible to the book. It's not just for people who are in banking or in fintech. It's for everybody. And the reason why I think it's so important is because we all have what I call a shared digital currency future. We're all going to use a digital euro. We're going to use a digital dollar. You can argue about what it looks like, how it's built, but that's a future that we all are going to share. I live it today in Shanghai, where I'm talking from, and you're going to live it in not too distant future in Madrid.
Actually, I live in Valencia, but I always say Madrid for the time schedule that is easier. But yes, like here in Europe, and I have a lot of viewers from America as well. They are going to live it quite soon. So as you've said, you're in Shanghai, but people have seen an intro, so they know that you've already been living for 12 years in China. And in your book, you explain it really well that you lived in China before the version 1 payment digital system, and now it's starting the version 2 digital system. So I wanted to start by this version 1. What do you understand, or what do you mean by this WeChat and Alipay way of paying? Because here in the West, people say, okay, this is like my iPhone that I can pay with Google, with Android Pay or Apple Pay. How different is it from Western system?
Sure, that's a really great question. And yes, let's start with what people know. People understand Google Pay and Apple Pay, and both of them require you to take your phone and put it near a special device, and the NFC, near field communication, talks between the phone and the device, and you pay. Right? We're good so far. I think anybody there who's listening is like, okay, we get that. Now, in 2014 is the same year that Apple Pay launched. That year, WeChat Pay and Alipay both launched in China. Now, they had a different way of making payment. Here, we use something called QR codes. And if you're watching this on video as opposed to listening, I have a QR code above my shoulder on the cover of my book. But the point is, a QR code, if used by a vendor to receive payment, requires no machine. You don't have to buy a point of sale device. The person paying you simply takes a picture and it goes beep, and you put the amount of money you want to transfer, and then you send the money. So it requires less machines, and it is good for financial inclusion because people don't need to buy anything to use it. So that means that somebody who has a noodle stand on the street of Shanghai, if they print out a piece of paper with their QR code, they can accept digital payment and be part of the digital world. So Google Pay, Apple Pay, NFC technology based, and WeChat Pay and Alipay, all based on QR code payment. And here's the thing to watch. When you look at Facebook Pay, when you look at Square and now PayPal, they're all rolling out what? They're rolling out QR code-based payment because it's simply easier to use. It's a great technology. Both are great, but I have to tell you that once you go QR code, it's so easy for most people, and it doesn't require expensive machines that once you start using QR codes, you never want to go back.
That's a great example, the one that you've put with noodles. And I've read also that even beggars in big cities, they have a QR code with WeChat and Alipay. So you pay them with your phone instead with cash. And I think in some interviews you've said, okay, we don't use cash anymore. So how is living this cashless life in the big China cities?
Yeah, so I have to go, let me take one step back to make one thing clear to everybody. So these payment platforms, WeChat Pay and Alipay, essentially led China to go what I call cashless. And that's the title of my book, because we don't use cash anymore. Because when I walk out of my house, I make sure I have my cell phone, of course, but beyond that, I never touch cash because all we use are WeChat and Alipay. Now, I call those generation one or first generation systems. And now China's moving on to something called central bank digital currency, or CBDC. Yeah, I know it's a hard one. CBDC, right? So how is it? How is being cashless? And the answer is it's great. That's what inspired me to write the book, because it's a nice lifestyle. And many of you out there are saying, well, look, I'm already cashless. I use Google Pay and Apple Pay, and I don't use my wallet. And that's great for you. But what you have to understand is that WeChat and Alipay are more deeply embedded in society in China. So I can use WeChat and Alipay to buy stocks and bonds. I can use WeChat and Alipay to buy insurance, health insurance, car insurance, home insurance. I can use it to manage my financial services. So if you think Google and Apple Pay are great, and they are, I'm not knocking them, ready? Think about being able to do 100 times more with them. And that's what going cashless in China is like. You can do so much more. And also you can move larger amounts of money, and you can do it more securely because we use biometric IDs. So there's a lot of things that are similar about the system, but when you really read cashless or when you analyze them, you see how much further China has gone, and I'm excited about it. It's a great life. It's really nice. That's the best way I can say it.
And Richard, you've said, okay, when Apple Pay launched, they launched with NFC instead of QR. And you've explained really well in your book that there was a different wish for this digital money, whereas the PBOC, like the People Banks of China, they wanted to make a bigger inclusion in the banking system for a lot of people. What Apple wanted is to sell more iPhones, because iPhone 6 actually had the technology NFC, whereas the previous iPhones didn't have it. So I wanted to ask you, you've said like 100 times more. I've read in some other book that digital payments in China outnumber 50 times to 1 in the US. What is the amount of digital money transactions being done right now in China with the version 1 system?
Sure, that's a really great question, and you made a wonderful point. In 2014, when Apple launched Apple Pay, I call it financial exclusion by design. Because if you had an Apple 5, 4, or previous generation of iPhone, you were not included. You must buy the new phone to use the nice new Apple Pay. In WeChat Pay and Alipay, when they launched the apps, They designed the app specially to work with the cheapest smartphone that was available on the market, ones that were already several years old and not the best. So the idea was to make everybody available to use Alipay and WeChat Pay. Now, here are some statistics that are just mind-blowing for you. And so that I don't get them wrong, I'm actually going to go to for those who are on podcast, you're not going to hear it, you're not going to see it. For those who are actually listening, I'm going to change, or watching, I'm going to change the background a little bit. But here are the numbers. Mobile digital payment in 2020 in China, or 21, pardon me, was worth $62 trillion. Now, that's just a big number. And you say, well, what does that mean? So let's look at it relative to China's GDP. So mobile payment was 4 times the GDP of China, which is $15 trillion. So mobile payment, 4 times China GDP. Now we're going to go to the United States for comparison. Now, let me tell you this. Mobile payment is so small that we can't even use it as a comparison. And that's fine. People say, well, we don't use mobile payment, we use cards. So if we look at all of the credit card-based payment in the United States, it's about $8 trillion. Credit cards, debit cards, what they call general purpose cards. And that's 1/3 of GDP of the United States, which is 23. So hold on here a second. For anybody who's telling me, look, I've got Google Pay, Apple Pay, I've got Visa, MasterCard, I've got the same digital life that you have in China. If that is true, then why is your digital payment worth 1/3 of your GDP? And why is China's worth 4 times China's GDP? In that difference is fundamentally the availability of goods and services and things that you can do with digital payment that simply don't exist in the United States. You're not going to buy stocks and bonds with your credit card. Maybe you can somehow, but it's not common. You can buy stocks and bonds in China, with Alipay and WeChat Pay. It's perfectly okay. Now, it's not going to be $1 million worth, but still, the point is, it is more deeply integrated into society. And the GDP figures that I just said show that and prove it in an indisputable way.
Next. Richard, that question was clear. And now that we are going to the future, let's see what these CBDCs are and how different are from this version 1, especially China's CBDCs.
Sure. So the important thing to understand is that we're now making a leap. And the leap we're making is really based on the technology that we use for cryptocurrency. And with cryptocurrency, we talk about tokenizing money. So a central bank digital currency like China's and like the digital euro, they're all looking at the concept of taking a euro or taking a 1 RMB coin and turning it into a string of zeros and ones. Now you say, well, what does that mean? It basically means that we will have digital wallets, and rather than having money in accounts, we will have money that sits on a digital wallet so that I can make payment from me to you without a bank, without a credit card, without anybody in between us. And that's the fundamental revolution that cryptocurrency brought to payment, which is direct, what we call peer-to-peer or P2P payment. So China's central bank digital currency is just in trials now. It's not been launched in the country, but the big thing to understand for everybody out there is that it borrows from cryptocurrency, and it allows for payments between people without a bank, without a credit card, without Apple Pay, just me sending you money, and it's free and it's immediate. And that's the important part.
And apart from all these cool features that the CBDCs have, you've explained it really well in your book, is that you can even pay without signal, because the objective of the Chinese government is to be able to have a digital cash. So you're able to pay in cash when there's no signal. So how is it possible? How is it possible that I pay you without data?
Sure. Okay. So let's, here's the great thing about tokenizing money. Okay, my last answer, I said, well, we have these things called tokens, and they're on our digital wallet, right? So for me to pay you, I basically say, okay, here is a digital token, and I want to give it to you. And under normal circumstances, I'm connected to the internet or through a cell phone signal, and it goes from my wallet and it goes to your wallet. Simple enough, right? So that's the basic technology. It's obviously more complicated with lots of checks for security in between, right? But now let's take the example where we are both in the mountains in China, okay? Because I like to go hiking, and I go hiking in the mountains. And you can go to places where there's no signal. Makes sense. We're very remote, and we're at 12,000, we're at 4,000 meters, and we have no signal. So how do we pay one another? Well, remember before when we talked about Apple Pay and Google Pay, I said that they use something called NFC, near field communication. All right, and that's a way for one phone to talk to another just by putting it next to one another. They have this communication. So what we can do in China now is to basically say, okay, we can take one phone, put it next to the other, and we can actually make payment from one phone to the other without a signal, just the two phones talking to one another. And we can even go one better. We don't even need a phone anymore. China has built these small devices. They're about the size of a small credit card, a little thicker, and they have a digital display on them, and they have a little tiny small keypad. And you can take one of these small cards and put it next to another and transfer money, digital money, from one person to another with no signal and with no cell phone, just a very inexpensive device. And that's really important for financial inclusion, for making sure that poor people who don't have cell phones, who don't have data, they can use digital payment too, because these cards are very, very inexpensive.
And for the future, as far as I know, these CBDCs have been launched without smart contracts, but they have the capability to have smart contracts. And I would like you to explain which would be the possible future applications to use smart contracts in China's CBDCs. How do you imagine like really cool transactions that we cannot do with physical money?
Sure. That's a great question. So we are all going to live into this future where we have payment. We just pay each other money, and then we buy stuff, and we're going to buy maybe a life insurance policy. So the way it goes now, we buy a life insurance policy, we pay them somehow, through the internet, we pay them, and we get this paper contract in the mail, right? Well, what happens if we go to a future where we say, well, my life insurance policy has to be paid 2 times per year, and the policy can now be included on a smart contract that's actually inside my digital wallet. So now the payments can be made automatically twice a year to the company, and it's not a matter of me having the contract. My wife is also named on the contract. She could have a digital token that has the smart contract on it. I can give it to my wife. I can give it to my kid. I can give it to my mother, whomever. But all of those people who are named on the life insurance policy can also get a copy through a digital token. So we have this new way of sending contracts. We're used to thinking about contracts as a piece of paper with my signature on it, and I have to have it in my special place in my apartment and hopefully somewhere at the bank so that it doesn't burn down, right? So, but now we're going to look at a world where the contract will also be included on money. And we can just call it a coin or a digital coin with a contract attached to it, and it can be sent to all these different people who are related to that contract. That's one way to think of it.
So it would be quite similar to Ethereum, Solana, or other cryptocurrencies, smart contracts that are working right now, right?
Sure, exactly. And, and I didn't want to reference them, but yes, you're right. It is exactly like a smart contract on Ethereum or Solana. Thank you. I should have said that. But yes, perfect.
But what cryptocurrencies don't have, and also what most of the countries don't have on the West, are that you have named it at the beginning of the interview, are the digital ID. So can you explain how this digital ID is working right now, and how will it work with the CBDCs in the future?
Sure. That's a really interesting issue, because what's getting a lot of play in the news, what we read about, is digital currency, both crypto digital currencies and, of course, digital euro. Central bank digital currency is also getting in the news a lot. And we need two things to really work with digital currency. And one is, okay, we need a digital currency. You need the digital form of money. But the other thing to go with it is you need a digital form of ID. You need a way to say, hi, my name is Alejandro, and I need to make that digital somehow. And Richard, hi, I'm Richard. I need to make that digital. So what you see happening now in Eurozone is working on digital identification and a Euro-wide digital ID system, so that we can take a driver's license, so that we can take health documents, so that we can basically have a digital ID that defines us, that is secure, so that we know who's actually paying. Look, the reality is the bad part of digital currency that makes governments very nervous, and this is why governments get upset about cryptocurrency, is because they want to know who's spending the money. Where is the money going? That's what governments do. You can like it or you can hate it, and you can really get upset about it, but that's what they do. That's what they believe their job is to do. So they don't mind digital currency being zipped back and forth, provided that they know who's doing the zipping from one person to another, right? But what gets them upset is Bitcoin, where they have no idea how much Bitcoin is going from one place to another. And that's a longer discussion that we can leave for another day, or we can have it later. But the point is, they believe that's their job. So what you're going to see is digital ID rolled out before or during the rollout of a digital currency. And that will happen in Eurozone. It'll happen in the United States with digital dollars. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's another thing that's actually, I know some people say this is a nightmare. No, digital ID is a good thing. It means less identity theft. My identity was stolen this year. Yes. Believe me, yes, it was in the United States. It was stolen, and it's a lot of work to sort it out. And the funny thing is, is that it all could have been prevented so easily if the US was using digital ID like I have in China on my cell phone, which uses biometrics, a password, a simple password. That's all I needed, and it wouldn't have happened. But yeah, so it's really good for people, and people shouldn't be looking at it as George Orwell 1984. You have a digital life. Your digital life is not secure the way it is right now. Ask me, I know my identity was stolen, and it can be better, and digital ID will help with that.
I'm glad that you've recovered your digital, your identity, both physical and your digital is safe there in China. And Richard, I wanted to ask you, you were speaking about privacy. And of course, here in the West, we always read and watch like China is a repressive country where the government doesn't allow freedom to their citizens. And so when we imagine like the CBDCs, there will be, as you've said, this way of controlling even more the population. And I know that you have an analogy between how the CBDCs will work when you're paying a coffee and how the Western way of paying a coffee goes in privacy way. So how is different like China's CBDCs from how we pay right now on the West for our data?
Sure. Alejandro, you really read my book. I'm so impressed. So look, first of all, I would like all of the listeners out there to clear your mind a second. I get it. China does things that many people do not like. I understand that. I'm not arguing that. That's not the nature of the discussion today. The real discussion is digital currency and digital payment useful? And I think that we've made the case that it is. Now, the next thing, let me make clear, a digital dollar, a digital euro, it will not be the same as China's central bank digital currency. They will have differing levels of privacy. So just because China is doing a central bank digital currency, and I read this all the time, I hear people saying the digital euro is going to be just like China's central bank digital currency. To which I reply, no, it's going to be built with the privacy standards of the European Union. They're going to make you happy. They're not out to make you an enemy. They're not out to steal your data. Now, that said, the reality is the privacy of China's central bank digital currency is better than what you have with Apple Pay and credit cards right now in the EU or US. So let me explain. And you're like, no, that couldn't possibly be. China has something that's more private than what we have? And my answer is yes, that's actually true. So when you go to the coffee shop and you tap your Visa card and you buy a coffee, what right to privacy do you think you have from the coffee shop, let's call it Starbucks, knowing who you are? You have none. You have no assumption, no presumption that the coffee shop doesn't know who you are. When you swipe and tap, they know Alejandro bought a coffee, Rich bought a coffee. That's what they do. Now, as the data goes from there, there's a certain amount of anonymization that goes on. Okay, I understand that. But the reality is the coffee shop knows who you are. That's how it is. So when I use the China central bank digital currency to buy a coffee at my Starbucks in Shanghai, which I only recently can do, they've just, it's only recently been rolled out for use at Starbucks. But still, when I do it there, all of my purchases with China's central bank digital currency up to about $300 US are completely anonymous. So if I make a payment to Starbucks for $20 US, the equivalent, right? It's anonymous. And that's something that you currently don't have when you use Visa and MasterCard in the EU zone or in the United States. And you're like, no, really? And I'm like, yes, that's the truth. So there are certain elements of central bank digital currency in China that are honestly misrepresented. You know, the concept that the government is spying on you at all times. That's simply not true for China's central bank digital currency. It's not true for the digital euro, the early designs that we're looking at, and it's not true for the digital dollar. We can talk more about that, but these are really important points to make because I know people are sometimes afraid of digital currency because they read that the government will spy on them, and the government doesn't care where you buy coffee and, you know, what you do.
And I think that I've heard from you also that apart from Starbucks having your data, also Apple has your data, and even the US government has your data. So it's even worse. There are like 3-4 layers of people or of entities having your data, whereas here would be just the Chinese government, but separated in different ways.
Look, absolutely. Let's go into this a second. Let me start it from the beginning so that people really understand the discussion. When I use a Visa or a MasterCard, right? Obviously the store, the coffee shop where I buy the coffee, they know it's me and they have my name and my number. And then after that, we have Visa knows what happened, and MasterCard, if it's them, they know what happened, and my bank knows what happened. But then we have these people called data brokers who are in between, and they know what happens. Okay? So you've got an entire ecosystem of people who make their living by knowing what it is that you buy. Now, some of you are saying, well, a data broker has what's called anonymized data. So they may have a credit card swipe from Starbucks at 10 o'clock in the morning, but they don't know it was Alejandro who bought that. To which I reply that anybody in the data business knows if you want to, you can de-anonymize that data. Now, the next thing, does the government have access to that data, both in the EU or the US? And the answer is no, not immediately. However, if they suspect that Alejandro or Richard is a bad person, and they go to the police and they say, we want to know more about Alejandro's finances and Richard's finances, they get access to our banks and our credit card within a day or so. It's not a hard process. They do it all the time. So my point is this: most of the people out there are saying, "Oh my God, I'm so worried about a digital currency." Because central bank digital currency will mean the government is spying on you all the time. To which I reply, you already have digital currency, but it's outdated form of digital currency. And if the government wants to know what you're doing, they just have to go to the police, get a warrant, and find out. And it's the same thing I hear all the time. Ready? The government can shut down your money if you have digital currency. Look at Canada. They shut down hundreds of bank accounts and they shut down hundreds of crypto addresses during the trucker strike in Canada, and there was no central bank digital currency required. None. They did it just with the existing digital systems that we have today. So this concept that a central bank digital currency will give the government additional power above and beyond what it already has and can use is simply wrong. As I'm fond of saying, central bank digital currency does not give government superpowers. What you need is government that is protective of your civil liberties and your civil rights. And if you don't have that, you don't have it already with Visa and MasterCard and the digital payment world you live in today.
And Richard, this is like really mind-blowing. I remember when I read it for the first time. And also I think that even the same level of mind-blowing is reading that we've lived in a dollar system for the past, I don't know, at least maybe 100 years, or maybe after First World War, like the dollar became the dominant currency of the world. And you've stated that you believe that these CBDCs, China CBDCs, will be able to reduce this dominance. What do you think about this?
Yeah, sure. Let's talk about it. Look, this is an important topic right now. We have a war going on between Russia and Ukraine. And let me make one statement first. And this is a statement that is approved by the U.S. State Department, which is that China is in no way using its financial system to help Russia avoid sanctions. So let me make that clear right now. China is not using its digital currency, the brand new digital currency, and has no plans to use the digital currency to help Russia. It's too new and too undeveloped, and nor does it have any plan, and rejected the plan to use its credit card system, which is called Union Pay. It's the equivalent of Visa in China, and it's not using Union Pay to help Russia, and it's not using another bank transfer system called SIPS. Now, the reason I want to say that is because from that point, now that we've established that, we're looking toward the future, okay? And we're looking 10 years into the future, 5 to 10 years from now, okay? Now, here is what is going to happen. Clearly, with American sanctions, countries, not just China, but many nations are afraid that your money, your ability to pay can be cut off because we are dependent on a money transfer system called SWIFT, SWIFT, which is in Europe, right? So Russia was kicked off the SWIFT system and now has no access to send dollars or to send currency around the world. So we're going toward a future where countries are saying we have to manage our risk. That's a risk for us. We are 100% dependent on SWIFT to move money around the world, and that can be stopped. So you look at Saudi Arabia now examining whether they can use the yuan, the RMB, on a different transfer system that's owned by China to buy and sell oil. Okay, that is what I call good risk management for China, because that way, if China has problems with the U.S., they can't be stopped from buying oil from Saudi Arabia. Okay, now, in the future, there is talk that maybe that, according to my book, pardon me, let me rephrase that according to my book, what China is going to do is to use the digital yuan in support of trade. In other words, if you want to buy a container of goods from China, you can buy it as you do now using dollars, or you can do it using digital yuan, or the China's CBDC, right? And my thesis in the book is that it will be cheaper and faster and easier to buy it using digital yuan. And that's why people will start to shift over, and that in 5 or 10 years' time, what we will see is the decline in dollar use, buying things from China, and an increasing use of digital yuan. And I think that will change the composition. Now, does it mean that the dollar is dead? No, nobody is making the case that the digital yuan is going to kill the dollar. Nobody in China's government ever said such things. It's just reducing China's dependence on the dollar and increasing use of the digital yuan and the normal yuan for these import and export transactions. Now, if you take a small percentage of the dollar, because the dollar is so big, right? If you just clip off 5 or 6%, that's already a big change in our world, all right? So that's how it's going to work. And we can look for a world within 5 or 10 years. Look long term, not, oh, next week this is going to happen. No. Look on that 5 or 10-year horizon, and we're going to see that change start to happen. And I would argue that we are already seeing that happening. As soon as you saw the Saudi Arabia talking about oil purchases from China in yuan, the world has fundamentally changed.
And Richard, as we are looking long term, now I want to have a broader picture. And I want to go back to our broader history as a species. And we were evoluted in Africa, and around 100,000 years ago, we came out of our homeland. We are all Africans. So we started to go all around the world. And around 30,000 years ago, okay, there's like different opinions, but they say that around 30,000 years ago, Homo sapiens, we were in the whole world, in all the continents. But later, due to climate change, especially America and part of Oceania, were isolated. Later, it became the Spanish with Christopher Columbus and the European explorers that they explored doing not very nice things, but they rediscovered the world. And since then, we have become physically closed, like a whole world. We have seen it in the pandemic, and especially digitally, we have become a united world. So when I think about the future, I think that it would make more sense to have like one or different like global currencies. But I see the problem with cryptocurrencies that they are too stateless. So how do you imagine this future, like in 50, 100, 1,000 years? Okay, 1,000 is like maybe too far away, but how do you see like this way of interact in a global way that we're going to need as a species?
Yeah, look, that's a really that's a wonderful question. One correction, because I'm sitting in China, I have to tell you that the Admiral Zheng He, Z-H-E-N-G, and then H-E, Zheng He discovered America in 1452. Zheng He had a treasure fleet that went and circumnavigated the globe. But I'll leave that historical fact for another, okay, for another podcast. But look, first of all, I like cryptocurrency. I don't have any, don't tell, folks, if you're crypto fans out there, by nature, many crypto people hate central bank digital currency. Don't. You're going to use them all. You use stable coins, you use crypto, and you're going to use some currency that we're going to have in the future. So what will we have in the future? Probably something that resembles, to a certain degree, the now dead Facebook Libra coin, which is not a new concept. The concept that you take a basket of currencies, you put them all together, you take 40% dollar, 40%, 20% euro, 20% whatever, and you put this basket together so that the basket is the average of all of these currencies when you use it. And that's essentially what Facebook Libra was, but Facebook Libra wanted to do it without asking any of the governments and to do it sort of on its own. And frankly, it wasn't all that bad an idea. If they had agreed to know your client, KYC, and anti-money laundering, they would have gotten a lot further with their project, but that's another issue. But I think that someday we're going to have these currencies that will be baskets, because it's like the future is based on the past. We already have the ECU, the European Currency Unit, which was a basket of the European currencies from before the Eurozone. This is not a new problem. We faced that problem before, and and that's sort of how we use these currency baskets to solve it. So my bet is it'll be something like that. My bet is that digital ID will not be something that people will be surprised about in the future. We're all going to have a digital ID. I don't think that's like some kind of radical thing to say that people should be afraid of. We're going to live in an increasingly digital society. We'll have a digital ID. We'll have various forms of digital money. Bitcoin might even be around still, or not. If you hate Bitcoin, I get it. Maybe it won't. I don't know, but we'll have a lot of different choices in our future. It won't be just paper or not paper.
And going back to China, your experience, you've lived 12 years in China. And for those who don't know, you've also written a book, Innovation Lab Excellence, is it? About your experience as an IBM leader of the Innovation Lab. And I wanted to ask you, because the book Outliers from Malcolm Gladwell, he explains a theory that why Chinese, they work so hard, that he says, okay, Chinese background is of rice farmers, and rice needs so much work to do. So they are used to working all days of the year and during all hours. So what I wanted to ask you is about your experience working with Chinese people, because lately Elon Musk, he said, the Chinese workforce, the one working in Shanghai, has even higher standard working from the Tesla US workforce that is already super high. So what is your experience working with Chinese people?
Sure, and that's a really wonderful question, and it's rarely asked of me. So there's sort of two different answers. When you talk about Elon Musk and working in a factory environment, no question about it. These are, when you get to Tesla, Shanghai, these are the highest paid, best quality Chinese laborers that exist. So Chinese people in general work very, very hard. And contrary to what many think, is that they're also very innovative and creative. I worked with a team of people at IBM, of executives, and we were all white-collar workers. I didn't work at a factory. I worked with execs. And I'll tell you, some were really good and some were really bad, and that would be the same thing I would tell you when I worked in the EU or when I worked in the US. But the one thing that's really important is that there's this perspective that somehow Chinese workers when executives are not creative or don't think on their feet, and that's really not true. And the executives that I know were fast thinkers, very good at problem solving. Most of them worked very, very long hours. Not all. Okay, that's sort of a stupid generalization, but like, as you said in your book, there was no fear. If you had to put in long hours, and if you had to work a Saturday or Sunday, that would not be an impossible ask. When I think about my experience working for an Italian bank, and if I had a bank employee and we had to do something over the weekend, that would be virtually impossible. To ask an Italian employee. I'm Italian, by the way, folks. I have two countries. Italian. Okay. Yeah, yeah. I'm not gonna. I was about to burst out in Italian, but no, I won't do it.
Parli italiano?
Sì, sicuramente, claro. Yo soy completamente italiano. Yo tengo un pasaporto italiano, también uno americano. Pero if you ask an Italian guy, work over the weekend, forget it. Never going to happen. If you ask a Chinese guy to work over the weekend, a senior white-collar executive at a big company, no problem. It's no big deal. So Chinese workers, very good. They're not mindless robots. They're creative. They're smart. They do stuff. They solve problems. So yeah, they're great. Are they perfect? No. But are they very, very good workers? Sure, they really are, and people need to understand that.
And it's really interesting, this creative part that you've explained, because I was going to ask you, because in your book, it's really clear that at the beginning, all the tech Chinese companies that maybe started a little bit later than the US, they started copying the features. But now the US companies, Silicon Valley companies, are copying the features that are having WeChat and Alipay with all these mini apps that are mind-blowing for a Westerner.
Yeah, look, Alejandro, I haven't had so much fun on a podcast in a long, long time. My friends out there, if you've gotten this far in the podcast, please listen to what I'm going to say very carefully. China innovates. I know somebody is saying, "Oh no, look, they copied Twitter, they steal American IP." Yeah, I'm not arguing that. That's not the debate. The question is, what did they do with it? Where did they go with it? And many still see China as a country and a technical sector that just copies. Well, when you look at WeChat and Alipay or central bank digital currency, let me ask you, did any of you pay with QR code in Europe in 2014? No. No, nobody did. So when you look at Alipay, WeChat, these are innovative companies, and they're demonstrably, uniquely Chinese innovation. And now when you look at your phone and you look at the #1 app on the planet is TikTok, it's not that China got lucky. They're innovating. They're taking AI. They're doing things with it that the Western tech companies never thought to do, which is to build this whole ecosystem of short videos. So China is tremendously innovative. And don't be fooled into thinking like big article, Harvard Business Review, 2017. And the title of the article was "Why China Can't Innovate." That poor professor who wrote that article is going down in history as being really wrong. So don't think like that. China innovates. And if you're, so when you read newspaper articles and they say, well, China can't do this, China can't do that, look real carefully at the person writing that article and why they're writing that, because China can innovate and it can do a lot. And, if it says, oh, it'll take them 20 years to do something, China's fast. They graduate more PhDs and master's level students in science and technology than anybody in the planet. They can come up with innovation and, very very quickly.
And I think I also read in your book that in 2019, the patent application of China overpassed for the first time the US, something like this. So yes, the innovation is great. But as you are maybe half Chinese, half Italian, half American, I wanted to innovate also in this podcast. Okay, we usually do it in my channel, and that is that I want to play a game with you, Richard Turrin. And it's the it's the one word game. And you just have to answer one word, never repeat the word, of different concepts that I'm going to tell you. And it has to be the first word that pops to your mind. Okay?
Okay, go ahead.
Are you ready, Mr. Richard Turrin?
Listo.
E pronto. Allora, what is the one word that pops to your mind when I tell you China CBDCs privacy?
Good.
Alipay and WeChat payment systems.
Groundbreaking.
Russian CBDCs that we haven't talked, that they've said that it will be out by the end of the year, beginning of next year.
Dangerous.
Cryptocurrencies.
Very dangerous. That's 2 words. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But
repeat
very
it.
dangerous.
Repeat it. You committed a double crime, but we will leave it.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I have to go back. What's the first thing that comes to my mind with cryptocurrency? Terra. Terra.
Okay.
The just crashed stablecoin. That's what really comes to my mind because I write a lot about it.
Okay. China's CBDC's convenience.
Unbeatable. Unbeatable convenience. It is unbeatable.
Perfect. Future of the dollar.
Troubled.
Alipay and WeChat's mini apps.
Oh, I don't know. Oh, you're killing me with this one. I don't know what to say. I need one word. One word for AliChat. Convenient.
Perfect.
But look, I say convenient because I use them for, like, my grocery store has a mini program. It just brings the digital convenience to me. So yeah, that's all I can think of. I'm sorry.
And last but not least, China's CBDCs in international trade.
Mind-blowing.
Richard.
That's got a hyphen. It's actually 2 words, but it's got a hyphen.
Yeah, but we can put it together. That
we can put it together.
We will accept it. Richard, it's been a big pleasure. I think the viewers that have come this far, I'm sure that they will buy your book. But where can they buy it? Where can they contact you as well? And
Alejandro, look, thank you so much for reading my book. You are one of the best hosts ever. For those who are agreeing with me or disagreeing with me and want to reach out, please reach out via LinkedIn or through Twitter. I'm active on both, and I will get back to you on either one of them. For my book, Cashless, which you see perhaps behind me. If you're on a podcast, you don't see it. But anyway, it's available on Amazon, and it's also available on Kobo and a bunch of the other 50 some odd different digital bookstores throughout the world. It's been translated into Polish, so I've got a Polish edition if you want a Polish version. But please check it out. The easiest place is, of course, on Amazon.
You will need to translate it to Spanish. Sorry to interrupt you.
I've got the guy to do it. I don't know, but you got the guy to do it. But look, I'd love to hear from you if you disagree or agree with something I said. Nothing makes me happier than to do a podcast and then say, hey, I saw you on Alejandro, or I heard you and I really disagree, or I really agree. I'd love to hear from you. So thanks so much, Alejandro.
And before we leave, I have a tradition, and traditions are traditions. You live in China. And usually my guests end up by saying the sentence that I always start my interviews, that I've said, hola, soy Alejandro Sauquillo y estoy aquí para que triunfes. And I want you to say, hola, soy Richard Turrin y estoy aquí para que triunfes, which means, hi, I'm Richard Turrin and I'm here for you to succeed. Okay, you know Italian is quite similar.
Para triunfes.
Para que triunfes.
Para que triunfes. That one I don't know. Okay. Hola a todos, yo soy Ricardo Turrin, yo soy aquí para... I forgot. Para triunfes.
Muy bien. Very good.
Close enough. I'm sorry. I got lost I was so excited to be able to speak some Spanish that I forgot where I was. Para triunfes. Okay.
You live in the best moment in history. Enjoy! If you like this video, please give it a like, leave a comment, share it with the whole universe. And since I want to make interesting videos for you, I need to know what interests you. Write your suggestions. If you have enjoyed this type of content, subscribe to this channel so you won't miss any future videos. I'm working hard to make the best possible content for you, but it takes time. Consider supporting me in Patreon, the best moment in history, so I can stop living under a bridge and continue creating content for you. There's a link in the description. Thank you very much from the heart. Gracias.